My name is Paz. I come from Ecuador, and today I wanted to present a topic that I'm sure everyone has been thinking about a lot lately. There is this expected outcome that everything should become smarter, faster, and that more processes should be automated. But what often happens is that when implementing AI into these applications, then the result often feels disconnected from what we want to get to, or this final process that we want to help become a lot more quicker or to feel better as an end user. So, how do we improve this? On today's session, I will go briefly over what are the AI tools available in Appian, then a very simple use case that we can all understand. Then we will see how we translate these questionnaire responses from this example into actionable signals. Then how we can use these AI outputs in the workflow, how we can improve the AI process overall with feedback, and last, we will have some key takeaways from everything that we will see with a final section for any questions and answers that you may have. So let's begin with the very first thing, which is what are the AI tools available in Appian. So at a broader level, we have AI agents, which have a bigger capacity. They can orchestrate processes, they can do tasks for you, analyze different types of inputs in one single node. And then we also have AI skills, which are more task-focused. They are meant to perform a single action that you define in the prompt. And these are the two options that we have available out of the box in Appian. Of course, there are many other options and many other AI features available inside Appian, but I wanted to focus on these main two, and more specifically on AI skills. Because on AI skills, we have 5 different types of capabilities, which can be either to extract information, summarize information, PII detection, and so on. Which one to use comes more to a use case level, but I just want you to have in mind that these are the objects that I will be referencing today, more specifically AI skills, so that we can understand what is the architecture or the idea behind how we're using them, and then applying them can vary with the specific either application or use case where we want to implement them. So, what is the main advantage of using AI skills? The very first one is that they are very flexible, and I want to stretch this point because when we see that they are able to either summarize a document or to extract information from a document, we often just stay at that, and we forget that since they are prompt-based and that they understand natural language, we can configure them to do a lot more than just that single task that we want them to perform. Inside the prompt, we can add more instructions to it and get to a broader output than what we might initially think. So an often mistake, or maybe an often oversight that I see other people doing when trying to implement these AI skills into their processes is forgetting that they are prompt-based, and therefore you can add more into these instructions that you're providing in order to get better or more interesting results when using them. The second thing is that they are very easy to implement. Since they are a native object in Appian, you can very quickly create a new AI skill, set up what it needs to do, and then call it in any of the existing processes that you have. So this gives them the ability to be added into any existing process that you already have, and that way start making that process better without having to think of, I need to rebuild this entire process from the beginning just to add AI to it. And the third thing is that they are very easy to iterate. So if you have worked with AI before, be it in Appian or or any of these LLM models available, you might have seen that getting to know how a prompt will work better takes time. It takes different tries. You first have to, you define your instructions in a way this first time and realize that they are not really working that well, so you have to change them. That is very easy with AI skills as well. You have the option to change the prompt whenever you need to, change the examples, change the outputs, and that way get to the result that you finally want. So, with all of this in mind, let's look at our problem. In my example, we have a vendor management application in which vendors will provide information in the form of forms through the application. It can be documents, but here we're gonna focus on the questionnaires that they reply as part of the process in this application. And where we want to get to is to a faster decision making. And deciding what is the goal of adding AI into the process is the very first step and the most important one. Because what often happens is that we want to include AI, and the only thing that we do just to say we added AI into our application is simply extract a few fields from a document. And while that is still useful, and that is one of the very first things that were added as part of all of these AI features, it still falls short and does not improve the process more than this 1 minute that I don't have to spend typing in manually what's the information inside my document. So let's look at our solution. And for this, I have set up these 3 important steps that can help you identify an architecture path or an idea of a solution on how to make this application better by using AI and not simply keeping it at I am extracting these fields and that's it. And again, this example focuses on this vendor administration platform, but the idea can be applied really to anything where you want to add AI into. So the very first step is that our vendor submits their questionnaire. That's where we are starting. Step number 1 is defining the questionnaire and the AI configuration. Then we will see how we integrate AI into this first block of information and how do we generate these signals. And then we have step number 3, where we present this scoring and insight in such a way that it doesn't become simply more text, more summaries, more information to read on top of the questionnaire that I will have to read anyways. And lastly, we will have our final step, which is the review, feedback, and iteration. And this one you'll see is a very important one that I see often being forgotten when starting to include all of these AI features into our application. So let's begin. How do we handle dynamic inputs with a fixed prompt? Now, when we are trying to add AI into our applications, we have our AI skills, as you saw, and the problem when connecting this AI into the information that we are handling is that the information that we're going to feed the AI, the information that we are going to feed into the AI feature is not always either structured or fixed. In this case, what we will see is a questionnaire that can be managed by users. So users are able to configure this questionnaire, meaning it's not going to be always the same questions, it's not always going to be the same sections, but more importantly, we don't want to get the same analysis of the question all of the time. Sometimes in this case, what we want to do is analyze the question differently depending on what the question is asking. So it's different in a way where you may think even at this point I would have to create an AI skill for every question that my questionnaire is going to have. which of course sounds absolutely non-performant. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to create an AI skill per question that we're going to have. And in order to solve that, what we will see here is this. So here is our managed questionnaire interface. It's the usual. We have our questionnaire sections. We have our different questions per section. We have our usual buttons to add questions. In this case, we're going to focus on the free text questions. And then, in addition to the usual fields, what you would see is this very big AI purpose field, which is something thought into the initial structure. So in addition to what I am asking in my questionnaire, I am adding this AI purpose field where end users can define what should be analyzed in that particular question. And you can see how it changes from question 1 into this question 2. What am I looking to analyze in that particular question? So by doing that, we are including into the structure this purpose that doesn't stay hidden at the prompt in the AI skill, and that we can handle in the prompt. So instead of adding into the prompt, analyze this for this question, analyze this other thing for this type of questions, we're adding that at the end user level in that previous interface, and then inside our AI skill, which will analyze all of the questions, the same AI skill, then in here we're telling it, you will receive the question, the vendor's answer, and what is the AI purpose, or what is it that you need to analyze inside that question. So to look at this better, we can see in this graph, we have what are our inputs. First, again, our question, the vendor answer, and this AI purpose, which we added into the managed questions interface. And then we go into the evaluation logic, which is where I want to go back to that first point that I mentioned, where AI skills are very flexible. Because we're telling it to do two things. We're telling it to extract the information, because at the end of the day, we still want these fields or this information that's exact and precise to be extracted from the questionnaire. So we are asking it to extract what is the overall purpose of this vendor and things like that. But we're also asking it to interpret what is the quality of the response and interpret also against that question the AI purpose that was added into it. So on number 3, we define what are the outputs that we want, which is, in this case, a score from 0 to 10, an overall summary of the questionnaire, different flags or things to check out in that vendor's responses, and if follow-up is required or not. So with a single AI skill, by structuring it this way, what we're obtaining is a consistent evaluation, some structured outputs that we can later use and call in the rest of the application, and something that is scalable across the entire questionnaire. And just like I mentioned that this can be applied to many other use cases, if you think about this for documents, for example, if you have in your process a use case in which users submit many different documents, you can also integrate this into that by, for example, adding a table where, depending on the document, I also add this AI purpose, and that way, when I fit this document into an AI skill for the fields to be extracted, I can also fit it this AI purpose, and that way it can be maintained at the end user level, because one thing that we want to avoid is having to go through an entire development process whenever we need to adjust something in how the AI is performing that task. So with that, how do we avoid AI turning into more reading? So we have set up, this is my questionnaire. We have set up that the AI skill should do this with each question, how it should analyze each question. We're producing these exact signals and outputs. How do we avoid going into just adding all of these summaries into my initial summary view and making users read more and spend more time going through the questionnaire than if AI hadn't been added at all? So, a good way to avoid this is, first of all, adding an overall score. By adding this, users can prioritize which questionnaires to pay more attention to, and even when to go into each different scores questionnaires first. Keeping the summary short is a good way to also help users go through this information faster. And let's not forget to also add the vendor snapshot or the actual information into our interfaces all of the time. Next is making our flags actionable. So in this case, what you're seeing is we're able to, the AI determines which questions are critical, but we are giving the user access to click through them so that they can very quickly go and check those particular questions to see what is the problem with them. Because if we just added these flags, but they still had to go through the entire questionnaire and find which are the, what are the different questions that have a flag, it's still more time that's being spent on reviewing the final outcome than simply acting on what the AI already determined. So these three things I think are very important. Number one, adding a score, because determining a number and going with that number gives you a threshold of, okay, I can understand a 5 and an 8 much quicker than having to read an entire summary all of the time. Then adding a short summary so that whenever I go back into that questionnaire, I can very quickly remember what was in it. And third, the signals that you produce should be actionable, meaning at least clickable, at least they should work as a filter so that I can go into those things that were marked a lot faster and pay more attention to it. And then, how do we know if the AI is getting it right? And this is the point that is often not considered. We just add AI, we just extract fields, we just do all of these summaries, but that's where the system stops. If we don't add these, if we don't add the option for users to give feedback back as to what was, if the things that they are getting from the AI is useful or not, then we're missing a very important last step, which will then allow us to improve this process even more. Because at the end of the day, we are developers and we have this great opportunity to work in many different projects and in different companies, different processes, so we get to know a lot of, maybe I created an application for financial this time. Then this other time is for a clinic. So I get to know all of these different industries, but I'm still a developer, so I'm not an expert on that field. But the end users are going to be the experts. So they are the people who are going to know, is this flag actually something that's useful to me? Is this flag something that is accurate to what my process is? So adding these options for users to be able to provide that feedback will then allow me to know, is my prompt correct? And should I continue to add more AI features on top of it, instead of maybe I need to rethink how it was added and how AI is analyzing. And a very quick way to do this is simply adding, for example, in here, a yes or no button, which users can very quickly click to the AI responses that I have added into my questionnaire summary view. And also an option for users to add a comment on what was wrong or what was right. One thing that I would suggest here is to not make the paragraph or the comment that users can add required, because if every time they, for example, mark it with a thumbs down, they have to provide a comment, they will simply stop using it altogether, because we all know users just want to do the less that they can. So making it very fast, either a thumbs down or thumbs down, and making and making it available to them, the option to give feedback, is important, but also it's important to keep it very simple and quick so that they do use it. So now we have all of these signals, we have the feedback. What do we do with all of that? Here is where we create a dashboard where we can monitor all of these signals. So in here you can see at the very first box, we have how many questions have been marked with this thumbs up. Next to it, how many of these were marked with a thumbs down? How many questions have not been rated at all, meaning we can at least know if users are at least paying attention to it and using these rating options. Then we have the percentage of people that have followed the action that the AI is proposing. And an important thing is that we can add AI on top of this AI. If we are capturing feedback, we can also run AI on this feedback that we are capturing. So much like we do when we don't know how to create a prompt correctly, and we maybe ask another LLM, hey, how can I make this prompt better? We can still do that here in Appian with the AI skill, also working on top of all of the feedback that I am gathering from my users. So that way, I can also make the maintenance work of this entire application easier. By making a graph of how well are my questions and analysis working over time, I can also track and go back maybe, for example, to previous iterations, if a previous iteration was working better than my current one, and compare that performance. I can also keep it at a question level to know this question is already working well, let's not move that AI purpose anymore, but this other question should be adjusted to produce a better outcome. And going back to what I was saying about adding AI on top of AI, then we can do the same in here at a question level. So for example, I can send into the AI skill or agent what is the feedback comments that people have added, and then by analyzing that and the current prompt that I am also saving in my system, an AI skill can tell me, oh, you should make this prompt better this way. And the same with like overall, what is the feedback that I am being provided about my questions, are the analysis too vague, and so on. And another important thing here would be if we track if users are following the AI suggestion all of the time. Like for example, we saw at the beginning that the AI prompt is determining should this question be followed up or not. So we track that as well. The AI skill is telling me this question, you should follow up this question. So if we track our users following that suggestion, and we see that the majority of users are following that suggestion, then we can consider, okay, so if we get to a 90% of people following that suggestion, maybe we should completely automate that step. And if the AI skill is telling me make a follow-up, then we can completely automate that process and have the AI skill send an email with the follow-up for that question on itself. So by tracking all of these performance signals and knowing if the users are following and what the AI is giving me back is correct, then I can consider, oh, actually, these steps should be completely automated because it is producing the right results. So, and then with our key takeaways, so let's forget that automation moves tasks. The idea of AI is to make these tasks be a lot easier to go through with all of the things that we saw before, and the idea is to allow people to focus on the more important tasks. I think we have all heard in the other sessions that the idea is to keep humans on the loop, especially the more complex or important the information that we're handling is. But that doesn't mean that automation should be left behind. We just want to ensure that the goal that we want to achieve with an AI, either skill or agent, is clear so that people can spend less time on the things that AI can do for them and spend more time on the more important tasks or more complex tasks. Then that intelligence generates signals. What we want to get from AI going into these open responses, into these documents, is signals at the end of the day. Simply producing a summary is not going to be of much value, but making things easy to read, very quick to identify, does count as a signal that will make me go through this task faster. Then that architecture determines trust. A big thing that I have seen is that often we add all of these AI, but either end users or managers in the process don't really trust what is being produced, right? Because AI is not 100% reliable. We don't know if the prompt was correct. Again, we are developers, so we can test again the test cases that they have given us, but we don't exactly know if this is 100% accurate. So we should build these applications with such an architecture that trust is embedded into what we're showing. So what we saw before was we're not just showing a score, we're also showing this is why the score was considered low. We're showing these are the things that make this questionnaire either good or bad. So we should keep in mind this when building this application. The architecture, the way that we present this information matters so that end users can trust what we are producing with the ad. And then that feedback improves the system. Even Appian Copilot has the thumbs up and thumbs down feature into the responses that they produce. And that is because it's very important. If we don't know if the things that we are generating are good or bad, then it becomes a black box. We can't really tell if it's working, and we can't really improve. So not forgetting about trying to add feedback into the loop is very important. So the very last takeaway or phrase that I'd like to drive through with this session is that the value is not the AI itself. The value is how you design the system around it. Right now, with all of these AI features, everything is still very new, and we're still, like, even to get an LLM to give us the result that we want takes very many tries. So knowing exactly what to do is very up to what we start to get and what we start to test. So trying to get used to it, to experiment with it, and thinking about more ways than the usual one of let's extract this and that's it, is very important from this very beginning. Okay, so if you have any questions, this is the moment. Just remember, if there's anything else that you'd like to discuss, I'm from Deft, and we are constantly going through all of these AI features, so if you have any questions, you can ask them now.
So you mentioned kind of like essentially extending the prompt, making it more dynamic by allowing the user to have an input. Right now, from what I'm seeing, with the AI skills, between the prompt and the example, it's limited to 150,000 characters. I'm just kind of looking for your opinion. Like, at what point is it too much detail, or like becomes more efficient to make the prompt longer, or potentially anything like that? Do you have an answer yet, or are you still kind of investigating things like that?
Mm-hmm. It is very use case based. So from what I have seen, I haven't gotten to the maximum limit yet. So it does look like, at least for now, it's enough. But like one thing that I would suggest is try to start simpler. So with everything that the AI needs to work in the prompt, of course, but don't add things that it's not going to directly use. A lot of time, like you add, oh, this is your role, you are an expert financial advisor, things like that. And that is important, like what is your role, but try to start from a simpler prompt, and if that is not giving you the results that you want, then start adding more things into it, both to avoid running out of characters in the prompt, but also so that you don't add more information that you would need in the prompt from the very beginning.
And when you talk about kind of like the feedback loop, allowing users to provide feedback, at this point, are you then saving that in a database and allowing the AI skill to access that, so you're automatically applying like a memory to make it better? Or is that something that you're just capturing the feedback and then letting developers manually update the prompt?
Mm-hmm. Well, definitely save that, all of the feedback that we're getting into a database. But then what you do is, for example, in this case, what we have is iterations, right? So if you already changed your prompt from that AI purpose, the previous feedback before that change is not going to be used. So that is something to take into account. You don't want to send the entire feedback that you have received when you have already saved things, and that is also a way to maintain the feedback that you're sending not as long. So one thing would be the periods of your iteration. The next thing would be for this, still exploring it, but it's a good example where an AI skill can become too small, and maybe using an AI agent that runs, for example, weekly and analyzes all of this feedback that I'm receiving to produce these outcomes of this should become better, because then that's a good thing about AI agents that can get information from many different sources and giving them the resource of look at this record with all of the feedback and the questions asked plus the answers that produce that feedback to then give me, oh, this is what you should improve.
Yes, thank you for your answer. It's an exciting time.
Thank you. So similarly, like when you're moving kind of behind the scenes between environments, if you're moving a model up from, say, dev to UAT or something, do you have to move these records to transfer those iterations, or do you have to rerun them from fresh? You know what I'm saying? So if you have these versions of the models that you create, do you have to basically kind of retrain with maybe testing rules, or how does that work in practice?
Right. Well, for example, in this architecture, we have our AI skill that takes in the information of the questions, and each question has the AI purpose. That should be treated the same way as, for example, the questionnaire itself, where you would move the questionnaire questions into all of the environments. So in the same way, to maintain the same results across environments, the AI purpose should be sent into all environments as well. So you should maintain like the same data across all of your environments. When it comes to the feedback, you wouldn't really get it up until production because it's mostly end user driven. You can still test, I don't know, send a bunch of bad results to see if it is producing appropriate ways to make it better. But overall, like, the AI skill is going to work the same way in all environments, since right now they just do the task based on the prompt that they are given. So you can have the same AI skill all of the time. But since in here we're focusing more on the data around it, if you want to have it be the same in all environments, then that needs to be done. But you can also work around it.
And a follow-up to this excellent guy's question, do examples count as some of the prompt limits, or do they not?
The examples on the...
So like if you say, here is one input, and now here's the output that I expect, for example, like a JSON output.
The example down here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so one thing is the prompt, and you can include examples there. You can also help it. But the other thing is the example input and example output that we have on the bottom, and those do not count into the prompt, but they help guide the AI on if they receive a similar input, how to what output to produce.
So it sounds like it doesn't really count towards the limit, right?
Right. No,
That's
it
nice.
doesn't count.
So in the top right, there's the input tokens, output tokens, total tokens. What does that actually mean?
This is the tokens that are consumed by this specific object whenever it is called. So all Appian environments have an amount of tokens available that is used whenever this object is called. So in this example, what it's giving you is how many tokens you are spending on the input that you provided, how many were spent on generating that output. So in total, how many are you consuming? So that, for example, if you notice that you are running out of tokens all of the time, then maybe you can try to make the prompt shorter, try to make the input shorter, and that way adjust it. So it's just for monitoring.
Is it generally proportional to like processing speed? Like the more tokens, the longer these rules and agents are going to take to evaluate and complete?
That is really up to the use case, because sometimes you may have like a really long prompt, but is a quick action that they have to perform. So in the end, it doesn't end up consuming a lot. It really depends on what exactly you're using it for, and then you can use that to try and make it better.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so that'd be everything. If you have any other questions, you can always talk to me, talk to anyone at Deft Consulting. So thank you, everyone.